We do it live. We do it live.
Yes.
Welcome to your awakening. Please take all as your reality is adjusted.
Oh, welcome to your feedback. As you forgot to mute the other browser page. Well, at least I know the audio is working on the other browser page. Good evening, greetings, well met, salutations, gold morning, global gulag, or maybe I should say virtual global gulag, or global virtual gulag, whichever. Hello to everyone in the chat room. Bright is in and out because he wants to go and talk in other chat boxes. I don't know, whatever. And Society of the Spectacles in the room. Hello. And Dotty. Hello, hello. And Lion Share. Hello. Steve to Goose. Hello, mate. Hope you're well. Thanks for the music. Thursday night. Please check his show out. The Mystery Show on a Thursday night on the Steve to Goose channel. 8 p.m. GMT. Some music and some wisdom. Go and check it out, please. And Lynn Anderson, hello. And Dino is in the room with us. Wee Mad Mental Me, hello. And the Rebel, hello. And Uni Black Sister, hello. Right. Yes, it is another edition on this Moon Day evening of Sol Excalibre. A couple of minutes after the 8 p.m. The 2000 hours was a little bit slow. Right, I can stop screen sharing that one now. And I'm going to screen share something else and play something else to listen to for a few minutes. That's why that tab. Catching uploads. So multitasking, clicking on different browsers and different tabs to try and pull up the bit that I want. Right, yes. Just to mention before I start that, if you probably noticed in the subtitle, 2020, tyrannical, but mostly smiley. That will make more sense shortly when I get into talking about it. But first of all, I want to shut up and play this for you. Is it screen sharing right? Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's go.
Do you people know you're living in a pandemic, scamdemic, eugenic? Now take your face mask off. Pandemic, scamdemic, eugenic. Now take your face mask off. Now Boris Johnson, he can only do what he's told. Every speech that he makes is already bought and sold. He cannot flip the script that sits at his desk. His place is a mess. Party politics is infested with vested interest, cronyism and tyrants. No wonder these pirates setting fire to these streets, enraged by the cage and governs them like admiral fleets. Enslave the seas with people, build a man-made disease. Moral compass points to Trump and his gun. They say moral compass that dropped an all-American atom bomb. Every morning should begin with the sound of silence in honor of all victims of war, rape and violence. A drum beat, a feet, we all clap along. An ode to our healers, a song that took too long to come. Awakening the feminine mistakes in adrenaline. We waiting like gentlemen to beat you at the gate to break this pandemic, scamdemic, eugenic. Now take your face mask off. Pandemic, scamdemic, eugenic. Now take your face mask off. Pandemic, scamdemic, eugenic. Now take your face mask off. Pandemic, scamdemic, eugenic. Now take your face mask off. To meet the rules, to greet the fools, to asleep to realize the right to choose. We need a new freedom school. The seeds of change succeed in you. And you, and you, and you too. Sacred temple, face mask central. Where's your face? You know you wear a disgrace when you compare yourself to a virus. Brother Jesus, sister ISIS, myths and legends. Unite the red tent and brethren. Cause we rise higher than our confined desires. And we know liars control our suppliers of natural resources. The fact of seesaws is you tip one way, then you tip the next. Empathy presents a party politics rejects. And no one can agree on the fact that we have freedom. And no one holds the power to keep you believing in a pandemic, my soul. Pandemic, scamdemic, eugenic, that's how you face my soul. Pandemic, scamdemic, eugenic, that's how you face my soul. Pandemic, scamdemic, eugenic, that's how you face my soul. Attack the stream of consciousness with a vaccine with no consequence, and they wonder why there's no confidence. Look you in the eye and lie to your face. Remember there's a screen between you and the chosen few whose payroll pays for the debates. So ask the politician if they know how to listen, then request a definition of cronyism. From Eton College to the throne of isms, all legislation is a paid decision. As musicians, we arouse the chords, and we're trying to move the feet of the House of Lords, and we're trying to compete with their jousts of swords. We fight with peace and they fight with wars. We invent the keys and they lock the doors. We defend the trees and they condemn the cause. Cause everybody knows that THC is one of our greatest cures. So how can you deny this is globalism when for so long we've seen colonialism? Do you really think each country made its own decision to control coronavirus through chauvinism? New World Order, G20 summit, global pandemic, but who could run it? Golden ratio flows through us all. One people, one world, our curtain call. This is a pandemic, scamdemic, eugenic, that's how you face my soul. Pandemic, scamdemic, eugenic, that's how you face my soul. Pandemic, scamdemic, eugenic, that's how you face my soul. Pandemic, scamdemic, eugenic, that's how you face my soul.
Scamdemic, plandemic. Go and check them out. It's a band called Mobius Loop. That one's called Political Hot Potato. For those people that are just listening audio and don't see the screen share and can't see the name, the band name, the channel name is just Mobius Loop as well. They've got a lot of songs on their channel, some fantastic music, and yeah, it's not all things like this at all, but they've got a lot of other good music on there as well, so go and check them out. And that is the perfect opportunity for me to say, do this now in the chat room if you can. You probably won't be able to post a link, but if you put the band name and the title so I can quickly search for it on YouTube, if it's on YouTube, of course, or if it's on a platform that I can share. If you know of any similar music that is either license free or an open copyright, no copyright restrictions on it or whatever, I'm happy to play them. I think this is something we can do more of in this new environment of the way YouTube does its thing. For those people out there that create that kind of content, music or art, etc., because it could be not just the music, it could be the video content itself as well, the visual element of it. But if they're willing to put it out for free and without copyright restrictions on it so that we can play it without YouTube shutting us down, or if they give us full permission to play it, which, I know for some people, even if they're signed up with a label or whatever, sometimes they still have the ability to give out the permission to play their copyrighted content and things like that. But if you can, then I'm happy to play it. I think it's something we can do more of. Maybe we should do more of. And part of why I put the subtitle tonight, because that energy, you could call it the energy of joy, the joy energy. Where's my other screen share? That one. Pick the right part, so sharing the right one. Screen share, that kind of energy. If you begin with that kind of energy, then it makes it easier to address the bullshit, because you're already feeling a sense of joy and optimism, basically. Some people call it hopium, but that's just, you know, a cynical way of approaching it. But it's that energy of life, of optimism and growth, because really that's what optimism is looking at, the potential for growth. When dealing with a lot of the bullshit that they put in front of us, especially when they are deliberately gearing things to make it as fearful as possible, to make something that is not a deadly threat at all seem like it is the new looming monster terror that they present to you via the media, then being pre-energized by something joyous will enable you to look at more of this stuff and just laugh at it for the ridiculousness that it is. I've been thinking about this over the week. I was thinking, like, how can I sort of try and describe maybe why it is that I know for some people sometimes they might hear me rant about things and I throw in a little joke here and there, a bit of levity, a bit of facetiousness, and people are like, how can you be so piss taking in a situation like this? How can you laugh at this stuff when they're just bombarding us with fear on a daily basis? And the reality of a lot of the things going on are very serious. But it is that joyful energy, that energy of life, of being able to point at this shit and just call it out for the ridiculousness that it is. That's not ignoring the potential seriousness of things, of different events and situations. It's not to belittle any of the tragedies or bereavements or the mortal cost of various things that are happening, like at some of these protests that are going on in America at the moment where people are dying. One of the most recent incidents, somebody I'm going to say allegedly just because I don't know all the details of the case and whatever, so allegedly shot on the street in the back, basically executed because of their particular political beliefs. You know, they chose one political puppet, whereas the other people in the riot chose a different political puppet, different ideologies. But it's got to the point now where people are beginning to start mortally attacking each other. There was also the incident with the young guy with his rifle who got involved in an incident where he's ended up killing a couple of people. But again, I'm not going to try and say one way or the other with that situation because a lot of the details are still being fought over in the media public sphere, because now it's the court of public opinion and a lot of the mob are dictating which particular opinion they want you to have. And we're seeing a lot more of that overt, I'll call it brown shirtism. Brown shirts is a reference that refers to the situation in the Second World War during the Second World War in Germany, where, what could you call them? They were sort of like a militia almost, home guard. They were basically civilians who supported the Nazis, the National Socialists, such that they formed organized groups similar to a militia. I don't think they were actually armed, but they, like a modern PCSO in the UK, a pretend police person, they can summon the authorities. They have a sort of pseudo authority. Basically, they're just tattletales that can call in the real police. But in a similar way with the brown shirts could call in the actual military to deal with people if there was something that they wanted done. Yeah. But now we're getting to this kind of point where the mob, following one particular ideology, is pressuring anyone they encounter that doesn't agree with their ideology. And this incident really stood out to me because this imagery, I know I'm not going to play the video because just a screenshot is enough. You know, it's more of the same basically, of the mob harassing this woman to try and make her join in. But this imagery is almost identical to the imagery I use as a thumbnail for these shows, and the image that's at the top of my channel page. Yeah, and that's a picture from Nazi Germany during one of the rallies where 99% of that crowd were all giving the salute, and there's the one guy stood there with his arms crossed as if to say, like, oh, I ain't buying it, mate. I ain't buying your bullshit. And this is exactly what we're seeing again now with this kind of stuff. And this is just ideological, cultural warfare, psychological warfare, absolutely. And that's the majority of what's going on at the moment. But let me flick it back to the other image to come back to that one. Because that is just, I mean, this is CNN. This is a screenshot of just the actual video as it was put out. Just to, begin with the original reference, and then I'll show a couple of others which sort of emphasize the point. But this is the kind of paradoxical, inverted statement. This is like Orwellian language. Ignorance is strength, war is peace, freedom is slavery. This is fiery, but mostly peaceful. So they're taking Orwell's concept and just, making up new versions to say the same thing. War is peace. California wildfires, which are really bad at the moment. The majority of California is basically on fire. At one point, they were calling it a mega fire, something like that. It's getting quite crazy, but fiery but mostly peaceful wildfires destroying California. Inversion, craziness. This kind of meme emphasizes the point that this inversion and paradox is just a demonstration of absolute insanity. And this is broadcast on what is supposedly news media, CNN Live, on the scene, burning shit in the background. It's fiery but mostly peaceful. Yeah. I thought this was the best one I saw. Hindenburg, fiery but mostly successful flight. It was actually off the ground. So, in a semantic, technical, pedantic argument, you could say it was actually flying, but, a bit fiery. So that just had me thinking about the tyrannical but mostly smiley as a sort of rewording of the smiley-faced fascism that George Carlin described so well many years ago now. Modern fascism is not going to be Gestapo brown shirt uniforms. Let me just refine my picture because I didn't think to have it open, ready to use as part of my ranting. Modern fascism is not going to look like brown shirt, Gestapo, Nazi uniforms. It's going to be brand marketed. It's going to be analyzed by committee, which, they usually do. They have done in the past. They would have had committees on things like the social engineering, like Goebbels talking about how to manipulate people en masse and things like that. But I can't do a double screen share, which is a shame. It'd be good if I could have showed them side by side. But from that image to that image, and this is from the 40s in Germany during the height of the Nazi regime, and you got all those people all sticking their arm up for the ideology, and the one guy sort of, no, not buying it. You can see there's a little sort of gap around him because all the other people are hyper aware of the fact that if you don't go along with the mob, you will become isolated and destroyed, like a foreign body in the biological system. You will be identified, isolated, and dealt with. And in effect, that's what those people were trying to do with that woman in that other image. Let's do another screen share to flick back again. Oh, don't need to play the video, thank you. don't need to listen to their ranting and shouting, bleating. And this is without even getting into the questions of talking, digging into each side of the ideology and getting mired into the details of like, well, this ideology is right and that ideology is wrong because of this point and this point and this point and this point. Those discussions have been going on for millennia. And over the millennia, they've become more refined and nuanced into specialized subcategories of adjectives and clause, clause after clause, like a legalese document, which is why now we have things like adjective anarchists. Anarchism means one thing: without rulers. It doesn't mean without rules, it just means anarchy, without an overarching rulership of one form or another, whether it be a dictatorship, a democracy, an oligarchy, whatever, without that overarching rule. But now we have anarcho-capitalists, anarcho-communists, anarcho-socialists, anarcho-adjective, adjective anarchist, which makes no sense. If you're an anarchist, then you're an anarchist. Everything else comes after that. Everything else is a chosen modality of how you interact with the world and with others. But yeah, those kind of long discussions that have been going on for millennia, and certainly in the last few hundred years, have become more diverse. It's almost like the Reformation of socialist or social ideologies, psychological ideologies, rather than being religious denominations. That certainly within the last century, that divergence into loads of different ideologies and subgroups of ideologies, political ideologies primarily, or they've certainly been put into political categories. But anyway, long-winded way round of making the point of that aside, all those arguments and discussions and however many years of people building up evidence to say, well, this ideology works better because look at this country, it proves that this ideology is better. But the reality is we're still at this point of a mob intimidating, using the threat of physical violence, because as you can see, when their argument, even though their argument was basically just them shouting in support of their chosen ideology, sorry, catching the mic, making noise, but they were shouting their argument at the other person. Their argument wasn't agreed with, so they resort to physical intimidation. That's the subtle implied threat of violence. So we're still back to that point of, because you don't agree with their particular ideology, you're going to get beaten up or worse. And that just, in all the media that's been happening for the last week, to me, that just stood out. Those two things combined, I mean, unfortunately, they're both coming out of America, so it's an indication of the kind of situation America is in at the moment. But that combined with that, that's what the media is telling you. Fiery, but mostly peaceful. It's tyrannical, but mostly smiley. It's just unfortunate you can't see the smiles on most of them because they got masks on. But when it comes down to it, there is that implied physical threat, the use of force, the resorting to violent force of one ideology over another. That is supposedly on the street point of view of the general populace, almost like the BBC likes to use their Vox Pops bullshit, which is a manipulation. But this is what the media is telling them, and this is how that public receiving that media is then acting. So this is the emanation of that manipulation. This is the use of media to manipulate people psychologically, and then that's the result, or certainly part of the result. It's not just restricted to that kind of example. So in this year of 2020, on last week's episode, Earache was making a comment, a point about maybe we should start making time capsules, leaving time capsules for the people of the future to say, look, this is how crazy it was in 2020. And I was thinking of something like a USB memory stick with a loader, like, you could include footage and images of things like somebody driving their car alone but wearing a mask, stuff like that, to show, to demonstrate how crazy it is at the moment. And he was saying, no, I mean, just a old style paper and pencil kind of time capsule thing. Although in the future, mate, they're probably going to not go anywhere near it because, if it's made of paper, they'll be worried that the paper carries the infection. Because banknotes are dangerous, don't you know? You supposedly, paper can carry the infection. It could be on the cardboard box of the stuff that you just ordered from Amazon. Oh, no! There's Chinese people coughing into the boxes to send them over here to give you the cat flu. That's a Simpsons reference, if you didn't know. But if you haven't seen that connection, the Simpsons told us all about this stuff ages ago. But no, I thought this medium should survive in one form or another. Maybe my particular content might not. There is a bit of an infodemic purge going on at the moment, or is ongoing for the whole year. There's more channels been taken down recently, as well as a lot of the usual suspects getting hit with strikes, like Just Censored, his main channel, getting hit with strikes and stuff like that. But this medium is more than likely still going to be around in some form into the not too distant future. So I still feel doing this kind of content is sort of like a time capsule. Hello to people of the future. We're talking to you from 2020. Yes, this is how people used to do the media back in 2020. It wasn't straight into your brain like maybe you're experiencing it now, thanks to Elon Musk's developing a pig connector. I mean, a brain connector that he's put into a pig, but it's not a pig connector. It just made me think of Animal Farm, which often gets forgotten about in this usual kind of discussion about the current dystopian state of the world. It's easy to sort of make that kind of Orwell reference to 1984 and, the way he talks about the world in 1984. But please don't forget, he also wrote Animal Farm. And Animal Farm is more of a metaphorical representation of the same problem. All pigs are equal, but some pigs are more equal than others. And this is, again, looking at that imagery, you're seeing the same thing again. The mob is more equal than that individual. So if the individual doesn't agree, the mob will get its chosen desire because they have more equality than the minority. They've spent a few decades now constantly pushing into the public consciousness these ideas of minorities and the persecution of minorities. But now the roles have been reversed almost completely. Now those people who used to think of themselves as being in the majority are now considered the minority because they don't go along with the current political ideology. They're living in the old world, the old paradigm, so they're verboten now. They're not allowed anymore. They're considered, whatever, the derogatory labels get thrown around like usual. And it works both ways. I've over the years, I've been accused of being either side. I've been accused of being an SJW and I've been accused of being a neo-Nazi. So it's sort of like, make up your mind. Pick one. If you're going to give me a label, pick one. It's just part of the blooming course at the moment. That kind of crap goes round and round and round and round. And it doesn't seem to be getting you anywhere. And meanwhile, you're missing all these cues. I've talked a lot recently about how the mask is in effect like making people half-faced because you're only seeing half of their face. And we lose a certain amount of the subtle subconscious communication that happens through body language and facial emotions, facial expressions, things like that. But that level of the ignorance to those subtle visual clues includes things like seeing this kind of stuff for what it is, rather than being dragged into deliberately overcomplicated partisan or intersectional, as they like to call it, intersectional arguments about various minority rights versus other minority rights and things like that. People get lost in the kind of the background noise of that chatter of argumentation. So they miss the obvious, or they're blinded to the obvious in their faces. That's why recently I did that one episode called Mass Debate Too Much and You'll Go Blind. You know, it's a blindness, a social blindness that seems to be quite prevalent in many countries at the moment. And I don't want to generalize and say, oh, all the other people are blind to what's going on. It's obviously in certain degrees, and a lot more people are becoming aware of this stuff now. So they're realizing, it's like, oh shit, that looks just like Nazi Germany. That looks like an image taken from 1944 or something. What's going on here? So they are, a lot more people are seeing this kind of stuff for what it is. But I'm trying to describe a psychological effect that seems to occur when people are saturated by mass media that's giving them a certain perception of what's going on in the world. So they show them things like fiery but mostly peaceful. It's tyrannical but mostly smiley. It's just that, unfortunately, at the moment, folks, you can't see their smiles because they've all got masks on. I'm surprised there hasn't been a campaign to get people to wear masks that have smiles on them. I've seen a few imagery, and I've seen the one video clip where somebody was doing the Joker from the movie, in that kind of stylized imagery with the big clown mouth painted on the mask and whatever. But there hasn't been any kind of conscious branding to produce masks that have a smile already printed on them, kind of thing. I wonder why. Is it because they want people to be afraid? I'm saying these questions rhetorically. If you don't get that, I'm fairly confident I already know that it is definitely because they want people to be afraid, and having a blank mask, or even worse, having some that are similar to what are often used by the militias and the military overseas, etc., where there'll be some kind of like monster mouth with fangs and dripping blood, or a skeletal mouth, stuff like fear-based imagery. Things that are meant to elicit the concepts of death and pain and suffering, etc. So it is meant to be an image of fear. So of course they wouldn't create a brand where there's a nice big smiley on it. No, of course they wouldn't. But that obvious, sorry, did I just see my name go past in the chat? Don't forget about the various accounts you're supposed to be. Yeah, online. Yeah, definitely. Hello to everyone in the chat. Groove Dodger, hello. I know I saw a few other names pop in. As a Krishna, hello. Lopsam Tatsuro, hello. And Mr. Jones, hello, Mr. Jones. Dollar VFM, hello. Dollar FM? I'm not sure how to pronounce it. But hello, welcome to the chat room. Thanks for joining in. And before I distract myself too much from what I was doing, go safe. I'm sure I saw your name scroll past as well. Or so safe. Sorry. Hello. Might get back to what I was going to say. Yeah, that imagery, or the blindness because of the saturation from media, so that people don't notice these things more readily for what they actually are. So just a few of the kind of articles like I've been pointing out recently about how, you know, a lot of this stuff is fairly obvious and in your face now. So maybe this is an indication of kind of like damage control, the media trying to take back control of the narrative because too many people are actually starting to turn around and go, no, what the fuck is this shit? This makes no sense. What are you doing? This is an article that, yeah, in the Mail online, maybe some of the other media covered it as well, I don't know. But this is about a woman who works in a care home, Louise Hampton, and she's talking about basically about how she was given a certificate to say that she was, you know, competent in dealing with the coronavirus, the pandemic situation. But she claims, or she's made statements in her posts, that basically she was doing nothing. She didn't exactly learn anything from the thing that she was certified for. It was just the usual kind of care interactions with the public, and the whole thing was just somewhat of a damp squib. She didn't actually do anything. You know, she was, like a lot of people have said, basically, you know, sat at work doing nothing. Like a lot of the nurses when they're not preoccupied doing TikTok dances. The Mail online obviously felt the need to include a few graphs so that you don't forget numbers. You know, the numbers are important because these particular numbers have more equality than other particular numbers. So if you happen to look at the tuberculosis deaths for this year, those numbers are not equal. They're not worth you looking at. You shouldn't be looking at. You should only be looking at the COVID-19 deaths. They're the only deaths that you should ever be concerned about ever again in the future of all time. You just look at those numbers and, you know, don't forget or don't consider the fact that masks were only mandated. When was it? Around here sometime? No, it was about the 23rd, wasn't it? 23rd of the 7th, something like that. 23rd, 24th of the 7th. So masks were mandated about here. Hopefully you can see my cursor okay on the screen share. Yeah, but all of this is, yeah, you got to be constantly remembering this, you know.
It's over.
Was it?
It's bloody obvious that it's over, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, flatten the curve. You remember the 2 weeks? 2 weeks always makes me think of Total Recall, the original Total Recall. 2 weeks. 2 weeks to flatten the curve. You know, the curve looks pretty fucking flat down there, doesn't it? Yeah, and the masks were introduced about here. So basically, at a point when it was absolutely pointless, nonsensical to make them, well, technically they're not mandatory, are they? But the situation is being treated as if they are. I will mention some stuff about the protests as well at some point, so I'll come back to that. But it was just meant to make the point that there are some in the care industries, in the medical profession, that are continuing to speak out and, you know, put information forward to the general public to hopefully help the general public see that a lot of what is going on, I think I can be fairly certain in saying a lot of what is actually going on is just utter bullshit and hype.
If I could you just do a quick screen share of what I've got?
Yeah.
Because this girl is not working for the NHS, paid by the taxpayer. She's working for a private health company, yeah, Care UK. And I just checked the guy who's the director. This particular company has 6 directors, and the guy is called Parrish, the one that yeah, where are we? Here, Mr. Michael Robert Parrish. Now they were saying, oh yeah, we're doing lots of work, you know, to help people during COVID. Look, this fucking company's got 6 directors, and they're being given money straight from the taxpayer. And she is saying the hospitals were empty, we were doing no work. They're still getting paid. You know, this is, it's not like NHS, well, yeah, you've got to keep it going. You've got to keep paying the nurses even if they're not doing the work. This is, I mean, that was the idea of outsourcing health services, wasn't it? You could save money when there was nothing for them to do, presumably.
Yeah.
This guy has been in Mr. Michael Robert Parrish. He's got 15 pages of companies that he's been involved in. Christ, man.
She was at that protest as well. Well, according to that article in the Mail Online, she attended the protest in London. To have to keep in mind and be aware of how the system itself will at least try to co-opt any movement that begins organically, or they will outright create a movement themselves from scratch so that it acts as a what's called a limited hangout to draw in any support for these questions or counter narratives, as they like to call them. So that's always a consideration, and when you can find dubious connections and links, it sort of brings into question those elements where it could be, well, is this a setup? Is this being deliberately put out there? But let me jump back to some of the other stuff as well, because I want to finish getting through this, and I'll come back so that I can finish up what I was pointing at. If you thought it was going back to normal, if you thought that flattened curve meant things were going back to normal, now that we've got through the summer, we're creeping rapidly towards the winter, certainly the autumn into winter, but the weather has changed already. I think this solstice seems to have definitely flipped the weather around to be more wintry. We're supposed to be getting another heat wave, but we'll see. Anyway, talking about the fucking weather. But if you thought it was going back to normal, no, think again. And I haven't bothered keeping up any articles about Hancock, talking about things like, as he has done in the past week, making mention of things like, oh, well, we might have to have another lockdown, but we're certainly more than likely going to need localized lockdowns as the situation is ongoing. So they're using the threat of a national lockdown again, to keep you in fear, keep everybody in suspense, as they say, keep you on the edge in anxiety, so you don't know if you're coming or going until they say you can or not. But he's pretty much stating outright that they will definitely still be using localized lockdowns as and when they see fit to deal with the flat curve. Flat curve, just saying that just makes you think, like, what have I just said?
You froze up, Cookie.
I think he's crashed, Gary.
Anybody hear me?
I can hear you. I think he's crashed, Harry, but there's only us on at the moment. Gary, can you hear me?
Yeah, they can hear us in the thing. Yeah, we're still live. It's just Cookie knocked himself out for some reason. Maybe
Yeah.
one of the that he tried.
Rolls out, I mean.
I'll press the I can't do anything.
He's back.
can you hear me now, sir?
Yep.
Yes, loud and clear, Commander.
Right, cool. So it managed to reconnect. Yes, I'm back again. Hello. If you're confused, or for whatever reason, it decided to reset my internet connection just then. Yeah. Let's not get too conspiratorial about the possibilities of that. It could just be a random disconnect, but highly convenient timing. Yeah, I better stop before I get too much into Dr. Evil character. Right, where was I? Yeah, just ranting basically about how Hancock has made it clear. He's pretty much directly stated that they will continue using localized lockdowns. So if you think it's going back to normal because the spike is over and they've flattened the curve and all that, no. Outdoor drinking banned as lockdown tightens in Manchester. As I think I was in the middle of saying, like, this is on the Metro, an article on the Metro. And thanks to Taz for sharing the link. Outdoor drinking banned as lockdown tightens in Manchester because, people just can't correctly socially or anti-socially distance when they're drinking. I wonder why. And then there's and this I think is probably, apart from the protests as they've been developing and happening around the world, and the various people that have been speaking out at those protests, but the other thread that I've mentioned recently in recent broadcasts, is it not going to let me look at the fucking article now? I don't want to register. I just want to look at the article, or even just the headline. You bummers. This is on aviationbusinessme.com. It was basically just a sort of business trade website, like you used to get the trade magazines for whatever industry you work in. Airlines call for, I think it was immediate health passport before they restart. Let's have a look at the URL. Airlines call for immunity passports ahead of industry's restart, for that article that they wouldn't let me look at. So you can bum off. Yeah, so the airport, I mentioned, last week or the week before, the CEO of Heathrow saying they want to have tests, and which would obviously require a passport, so to show that you've been tested. And now the aviation industry itself, spokespeople for the aviation industry are saying the same thing. They want some kind of health passport, immunity passport. And just in the last few days in Ireland, it was announced, this week, like articles dated 28th of August, and there's no actual particular date of when the program begins. So I'm presuming, like, this is from RTE, just to show it's it's on an official mainstream media news site. Another spokeshole for the bullshit system. This is on a smaller site, breakingnews.ie. And this, I kept this one open because it includes the little video from the company that has made the app. Right, this is about a new application being rolled out in a trial period in Ireland, on the RTE article. It's New Health Passport Ireland app to help manage COVID-19 testing. Like I say, the RTE article doesn't really give bugger all details about when it's happening and the numbers involved and whatever. This article has a little bit more detail. By the looks of what it says in the article, the trial is beginning now. So as this is dated the 28th, so within the last few days, they are beginning this trial, which is going to involve pilot launch of the Health Passport Ireland. And where does it say who was involved with it? I know it did say somewhere. The different groups, sort of institutions, Talag University Hospital, Keogh's Farm, Emerald Freight, and a number of GPs are going to be involved in the initial trial of this. I want to try playing this. Hopefully it will. Actually, I'll need to stick it in fucking Chrome, won't I? Because otherwise it won't get the audio. Talk amongst yourselves for 30 seconds and I'll get this up and swap the screen share over to this particular tab. We're doing it live. We're doing it live, folks. We're just doing it live. That one. Share the audio off that tab. Right, I'm going to play this little video. The imagery is a bit cartoonified, so I'm not going to try full screening it. The imagery is relevant, but it doesn't exactly need to be seen in large scale detail. It's mainly listen to the audio.
Health Passport Ireland is created to protect our society and our economy. Built in Ireland by the Rock U Group, the system uses the very best COVID-19 testing, combined with the latest mobile technologies. Health Passport Ireland is powered by proven and validated systems, allowing us all to take safer steps in our return to our normal way of life. Here's how it works. With Health Passport Ireland, everyone can now be tested for COVID-19 at any time, which helps to protect you, your family, our jobs, and our economy. Your COVID-19 test will be performed with highly accurate serological or swab tests. Your test is performed by a medical professional. After your COVID-19 test, an authorised healthcare administrator creates your Health Passport Ireland account. Your login details will be emailed to you immediately with a link to download your Health Passport mobile app. The authorised healthcare administrator securely updates your COVID-19 test results in your Health Passport. Once activated, you can easily display your COVID-19 status on your mobile. Your Health Passport can be scanned if you wish, which helps protect those around us. Your COVID-19 status will efficiently display as green, amber, or red, dependent on your test results. This allows us to go about our daily activities in a safer way. We can all use Health Passport Ireland in many ways, such as travel, hospitality, education, healthcare, construction, offices, entertainment, visits, and much, much more. Naturally, the validity of your COVID-19 test will expire over time, so an automatic reminder will be sent when it's time to be tested again. Your status will move to amber when your test period has expired. Health Passport Ireland does not use Bluetooth or track your location. This preserves your privacy. The systems can work in harmony with existing government contact tracing apps. When a vaccine becomes available, your official vaccination status can also be displayed within your Health Passport. You can even keep a diary of your international travel and events you have attended. Health Passport Ireland can be linked to existing secure medical systems if required, for example, at your GP or hospital. You can visit www.healthpassportireland.ie for more information. Health Passport Ireland, working together to protect our society and economy.
Hopefully you got all the audio through okay for that. I think you did, judging by what people are saying in the chat. Yeah, people are already started to notice. I was going to mention there's quite a few little points in that 2.5 minute diatribe propaganda marketing sales pitch that should raise questions. And one of them is the testing, because right at the start they claim, accurate testing. I was like, well, what test are you referring to, love? You're saying it's accurate. If you look at the information available, what you're claiming would not be true. Maybe we should get in touch with the advertising ombudsman and, you're presenting a fraud to the public here because you're claiming this is accurate testing. So 80% false positive equals accurate. So as long as I'm correct 20% of the time, I'm considered accurate all the time. That's quite a big margin for errors and mistakes and being wrong. Yeah, that's quite good. But there's lots of little bits in that little package that should be raising questions. But one of the main things I wanted to point out with this is how, one, it's already been rolled out as a trial, which means in Ireland they're ahead of the game for a lot of other places. I know there are a few apps already available in other countries that are doing this. And of course, that's not even mentioning the situation in China, where all this stuff is already in place and active and part of their society, with their tracing setup, their surveillance setup. But this
And
is
India as well,
yeah,
Cookie, they've just done it, haven't they?
yeah, they've been doing it for the past few years, haven't they? I think
Yeah.
started several years ago with their digital persona ID thing that they were rolling out,
Yeah,
and
big
it was
different
supposed to
world.
be. It was supposed to be just a trial, but it's basically become permanent. It's still voluntary, I think, isn't it? The situation in India that you put a link in, didn't you? And I can't remember the bloody name of it now. Aradada? No, I'm misremembering it. I know I am. I'm scrolling up quickly trying to find the link.
That's what I was doing then.
Aadhaar.
Aadhaar.
Aadhaar. India's 750 million biometric ID system. Yeah, I know we talked about it in the past on, I think, mainly on the Wednesday night shows when we've been talking about that kind of surveillance state stuff. And as far as I remember, it is still voluntary. It's just that they're doing the usual kind of route of the private sector is requesting it more often. So the public is slowly being socially engineered into treating it as a norm anyway. And a lot more people are joining in with it because it gives them access to services that they wouldn't be allowed access to otherwise. And that's similar to what she's saying in this piece. And that was the main thing I wanted to point out. One is that element of the island being one of the first certainly in the Western nations to roll out this kind of app to trace people, but also to give them an immunity passport, which obviously can be used in an airport and stuff like that. But also because of the way in the script for this marketing promotion, it's subtly worded such that it gives the listener, the viewer, this impression that you won't get access to all those things you were used to unless you have this kind of passport, this kind of system where you have a device that you carry around with you that has, like the way they're doing it with one of those QR codes. You have some kind of device that has a digital biometric ID for you, a passport that includes your immunization details from your medical records. You know, you can't go to the sports games, you can't go to the cinema and stuff like that, the way she mentions it in the script. And that's even, leaving aside work, they do sort of make a little bit of a mention of those kind of things, but it's not sort of specifically on that point. And the one other thing I was curious about is why, at this point, when they talk about how, it's not Bluetooth activated, it's not location data tracking, which is really deliberately misdirecting the viewer, because even though this app itself may not be turning on your Bluetooth or taking a note of your location data, the other apps and other services running in your device will be doing that. So it's no problem for the government to put two databases together and connect your health passport details from this Roku app to the location data of you as an individual. So it could easily be, this is kind of like what they mean by future proofing. It can easily be tied into other technologies that develop as this thing rolls along. So as they get more integrated into society and the populace becomes more normalized to this idea that, look at that, travel, construction, healthcare, offices, entertainment, education, all requiring you to have this passport. This is kind of the integration into society. But yeah, the other thing that I was curious about, and I know this might seem a bit of a side point, but I don't feel that it is, why, when they make reference about how the device, the ID app will register whether you are infected and how you will have to get regularly checked. Right, it says your official vaccination status can also be displayed. And then behind the censoring of the little shield that they put over her body, that looks like she's lifting a top up to do a booby flash. So where do you do that when you get a vaccine? You normally get a vaccine in your arm or in your buttock, for some of the others, but maybe in your stomach sometimes for some. I don't know for sure on that, but it just struck me as really strange how they're doing this kind of like censored imagery of the woman character lifting up her top, and it's censored behind the shield of the vaccine. There's I don't know, it just seems to me there must be some kind of subtle sexuality programming involved in why they've done that like that. Why, when she could have just shown her arm or something? They could have used completely different imagery to represent how, your official vaccination status can also be displayed. It's almost displayed. What? You mean like she's displaying her boobies to prove that she's got the passport? That's weird. Yeah, but anyway. The health passport in Ireland being trialled now, gauging by what it says in the articles. Like I said, I couldn't find a definitive date of when this is starting, but that seemed to be what they were suggesting. And then just a couple more. That was the same thing, the health passport little video clip. What else was it? Yeah, that one. I saved it on there because I just thought that was a brilliant meme. If you didn't catch it, please go and check out Really Graceful's channel. And the last video she put up, I am not your human guinea pig. And please go and watch it for yourself. There's quite a bit in there that is more than, I don't want to do it an injustice by just kind of like trying to give a generalized synopsis of it, but interlinked into what I'm talking about tonight with the immunity passport or health passport situation as it's rapidly developing as we're going into the winter period when they'll start pumping out propaganda about the second wave. Is just this little extra note that Grace points out about Dan Andrews in Victoria in Australia, the guy who's supposedly in charge at the moment with all the lockstep dictatorial shit that's happening in Victoria, in Australia. It's not just Victoria, but Victoria seems to be being subjected the worst. But Daniel Andrews was the same guy who in 2017 announced this project where all the newborns in 2020 and 2021 would be invited to be part of a clinical study where basically all the children, all the newborns will be track and traced. That's what they're talking about.
Unless the parents object to it, yeah.
Yeah, so in a kind of similar sort of bait and switch move like they've done here in the UK a few years ago when they made the organ donor scheme is no longer something that you voluntarily opt into. Like I remember back in the day, many years ago, you had to like fill in the form and you'd get a little card that you carried in your wallet. I used to have one many years ago that said, I am an organ donor. Yeah. Now everyone's an organ donor unless you choose to opt out. And you have to actually go and fill in the forms and say, I don't want to be part of this. Thank you. Please take me off the list. So they've done the same here with newborns, with this concept of tracking them to keep an idea, a note on their health and well-being of every Victorian child born within those 2 years. And what year are we in now? 2020.
Yeah.
And the project started in 2017, so they've had 3 years to get it set up and ready and going, or November 2017, but still, at least 3 years. So this concept of the biometric ID and having every living being, because in the long run it will include the Internet of Things, which will include all animals and people, you know, but we're all going to be tagged and tracked, so we can be tracked and traced for our own well-being, of course. And now, I didn't have that link open, but I'll just mention it. Oh, why wasn't my screen share showing the other screen then? Is it or isn't it? What's going on?
No, it's showing the last.
Is it showing the really graceful
Irish,
video?
The Irish.
Oh, it's still stuck on that. Oh, bollocks.
Yeah.
No wonder that wouldn't make any sense to me talking about what she mentioned. So I'll just, yeah, that's why I had the wrong tab done. Yeah, there you go, folks. That was what I was just talking about. Really graceful's video. I am not your guinea pig. And where she points out Daniel Andrews in 2017 posted an announcement saying how they were going to be running that project to track and trace all the newborns in Victoria for the years 2020 and 2021. And it is not what, if you stick into the definition of the word, it is not what would be called voluntary, because everybody is included unless they opt out. So if they weren't, you know, given enough information and details about the situation, would they even know that they needed to opt out in the first place? I wonder. Yeah, and especially now that they can make the claim or try to make a claim that they need to track and trace everyone because of the deadly virus, you know, the corona's going to get you. Then, yeah, will they bother to tell people that they can opt out, or will they just stick them all on the list anyway? This is the current situation. Hello again to the future. In 2020, this is the madness of the inversion, the inverted world. Yeah, it's tyrannical, but mostly smiley. He says as he smiles, yeah? It's tyrannical, but mostly smiley. So we'll see how we go into this winter period, and whether that flat curve can suddenly start magically developing curvature again, which, you know. Anyway, that was pretty much what I was ranting about tonight. I'm sorry we lost Gary, because the time's ticked on.
I just realised about 5 minutes ago he'd gone. I was reading the new consultation document on uk.gov. Changes to medicine regulations to support the rollout of COVID-19 vaccines. It come out on the 28th of August.
I don't know much about it other than UK Column mentioned it, and I've heard somebody else mention it as well. It hasn't actually been passed yet, has it?
I've not actually got looked at that part of it. I was just reading it. It's giving more or less saying you no choice, you're having it. Medicine regulations, the Human Medicine Regulation 2012 HMRS, which attached draft Human Regulations amended, set out a comprehensive regime to the authentication
authorization.
I've left the teeth in touching.
So, let me read it. Regime for the authorization of medicinal products for the manufacture, import, distribution, sale, and supply of those products, for their labeling and advertising, for pharmacovigilance. That's one I've not heard of before. Pharmacovigilance. So they're talking about monitoring the data from the pharmacies or something, or collating the information from the pharmacies maybe. They also provide for enforcement powers for the authorization and supervision of medicinal products. That was why, they mentioned it, because this is potentially going to enable them to rapidly release medication that may not have reached the usual requirements to be licensed.
Yeah,
So they're changing the or attempting to change the legislation so that they can basically punt this stuff out before it's been officially tested and licensed.
it actually says that somewhere. I've read that somewhere. I can't remember where I've just read it. Nature of the timing, I think it's down here actually. Targeted decisions. You're almost in them words as well, what you said, Cookie.
Yeah, I think it was UK column that I heard them talking about it. That's basically them trying to give themselves the legal get out. Just
That's
lack
it,
of liability again. That's really what it all comes down to. And this is like I've been talking about for ages now, why they keep saying face coverings, and they deliberately don't specify a particular mask that you're required to wear, because they know then that will put them in a point of being liable for potential damages when you turn around and say, well, that mask you told me to wear didn't protect me, I'm now ill, so it's your fault because I was wearing what you told me to wear and it didn't work. Well, I wonder why.
There you go, that's it. To provide transparency, we propose to amend the HMRS to make it explicit that the supply of products, including COVID-19 vaccines, which is temporarily authorized under Regulation 174, may be subject to conditions. This imposition of conditions enables the licensing authority to define the safeguards that are prerequisitable, you know what I mean?
Prerequisite.
Well, yeah, for the safe supply and use of the product, and without which authorization would be not valid. This can range from specifying whom the product is suitable for, setting batch testing and qualifying assurance standards, and ensuring that the appropriate storage is in place throughout the supply chain. Given its importance, it is appropriate to the article of this entire element of licensing authorities' decision-making more fully.
Yeah.
It's a
So that's basically them trying to completely sidestep the usual requirements for licensing, such as, and I mean, like it says there, batch testing and quality assurance standards. So in other words, they want to give you a vaccine, supposedly a potion, that is not meeting the usual quality assurance standards that would mean it would be licensed. Has been developed very rapidly, multiple times more rapidly than the usual timescale for a vaccine development, and most likely the one that they will, or the type that they will be using, will be a experimental type based on RNA or mRNA, rather than the usual kind of concoction that they call vaccines. They want to give you a potion of stuff that, if it's that RNA type, can potentially permanently change your DNA, and they will be in no way liable for anything that goes wrong. The government or the companies that produce it or the companies that administer it. none of them, if that legislation gets set up, will be liable in any way whatsoever for injecting you, and obviously your relatives, your children, etc., injecting you with a concoction that they can't prove is safe and they can't prove is effective.
Well, you think about it as well, as you're biologically changing you, you're then their property, they can then register you.
Yeah.
Because otherwise they can't register a human being, can they, or a living thing?
Well, it's a grey area in the legal environment still at the moment. They've been, over the past however many years, they've been working on the legislation because they knew this kind of biotech would be coming. This is why for the past however many years I've tried to make the point that the electronic, the mechanical technology is one thing, but the thing that is really the danger on the horizon that is rapidly approaching us is the biotechnology. Physical technology is one thing. It's going to enable the surveillance state when they get all the 5G set up and they turn on the Internet of Things, etc., the track and trace, the biometric IDs, blah, blah, blah. That's a surveillance prison. That's the virtual panopticon. But the real danger is the biotech that will literally mean the concept of what we call human beings now will be over and done with. That's transhumanism 101, which just goes hand in hand with eugenics. If people are willing to get into the realms of transhumanism, then who's to say when they decide that your particular model range is out of date? Your existence is considered outdated and detrimental to the system. So your existence will be overwritten with the latest update. In other words, an RNA altering vaccine that's injected into you that overwrites your original program, your original DNA code. That, add into that as well, and this links into talking about the health passport kind of setup, yeah? Gatesy himself, Beelzebub Gates, has said this in one way or another. And a lot of these companies have also mentioned this. That Roku app mentions it in a way. These things will need constant updating. Yeah, that app makes mention of how your passport, the verification of your passport, will have to be regularly updated. So this isn't a once and you're done. This isn't I got my license now, so now I can be free again. This is you will do it once a year, and eventually that could be moved. Those goalposts could be moved, and it could be you have to register every month. You have to register every day. You can't leave your home until you give a sample of blood to register with the system. Yeah.
This is why I don't understand people not clicking on. It's like, if it's a vaccine, that means it's done and dusted if you've had it.
Should
you
be,
shouldn't have to have
supposedly.
it again. Yeah? But so why do you have to be tested every 12 months and injected every 12 months?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Gates, he has pretty much said it directly. It's like, this vaccine will not be the end of it. You will need updates.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in other words, he's saying every year you'll have to go and get it again, which just like his computer program shit, Windows has to be updated every so often because otherwise supposedly it doesn't work anymore. People have become the new tech, the new hardware. And that's why I made mention that the biotech is the real danger area more than anything. The surveillance state obviously is dangerous, but nothing compared to the biotech. That is literally them. Often in the kind of conspiratorial realm, there's that thread talking about depopulation and things like the Georgia Guidestones and stuff like that, etc. But an element of that doesn't necessarily need to mean the literal destruction of people, as in genociding people, killing them, etc. It could mean the destruction of mankind as we currently know it, which means if they persuade a large portion of the population to become this new transhuman concept that Gates will update every year for you, as long as you pay your subscription and do as you're told, That is the end of humanity as we know it. So that is sort of a genocide of the current population of the world.
The Georgia Stones one, that one was blown out of proportion, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was built for a different era. It was built for the Cold War era, wasn't it?
Yeah.
If there were ever a nuclear war and the worst survivors and that Stone survived, it gives them the new set of 10 Commandments.
And it coincides with the Denver airport dumb, the deep underground base that's under the Denver airport. They were all built around the same time and for that reasoning. I think primarily for that reasoning, yeah. It was a preparation for and a forewarning against a nuclear conflict between East and West. It's sort of like saying, this is what will happen if you start throwing bombs at each other.
No, they can be used for when this magnetosphere has gone too weak and not protecting us proper.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. I know that might seem a bit of a tangent, but but no, I know what you mean. It's a good point to mention the protests. Obviously, over the weekend on the Saturday, there was the protest gathering in London. There was another one in Berlin. There was another one in Belarus. There was various ones around the world. Certainly across Europe, there was quite a few. And the media has mostly ignored the majority of them. They've mentioned some of the main ones like London and Berlin, but they've done their usual thing of being dismissive and disparaging. I think the worst one I saw was the Sun article talking about crazy conspiracy theorists in London who think that the virus is a hoax. And it's the usual kind of scum, splash headline of crazy conspiracy theorists, that kind of shit.
Yeah.
So, of course, the media's done their usual toeing the line of the narrative and the state agenda. But they have mentioned it here and there. And when people, if they do, and I know for a lot of people these days they will, even if they don't do it consciously by themselves, they will encounter this stuff when they're moving around the internet. There is so much that's been posted about this situation and those events on the internet that it's very easy to dismiss those mainstream media bullshit articles. Because like the Sun, they claim there was a few thousand people there. No, there was 30,000 plus people at least in London. And that's just a general guesstimation. It could have been more than that when you added in all the people straggling around, etc. So
if you have a look in Skype, Cookie, I've put
I saw some of the pictures
montage of pictures where it's I think there's about 6 or 7 different countries all on one picture.
Yeah, I did see it. Let me see if I can find it.
I've turned it off because it might.
There it is. Yeah. Right, okay, let me screen share that. Sorry, Taz, I didn't see your message until just now when I've gone back to look for this on Skype. Yeah, there you go. Argentina, Spain, Belarus. That's Albania, Bulgaria, Poland, Thailandia. I don't know where that is. Thailand, yeah, and Canada. I'm not sure what language this is written for. Is it probably a European?
I think it was either Belgian or Belgium, Mexico. Come from Mexico, or it was one of their Spanish-speaking countries. I don't know. Hispanic.
If I put this up when Gary was here, he probably would have been able to say.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, most of these places haven't been mentioned in the mainstream at all. The mainstream has mentioned London, they've mentioned Berlin, and I think I saw one mention Poland. But they haven't really talked about how many different gatherings there were in different places around the world. It wasn't just London, it wasn't just Berlin. But this is, as I was going to say, if people do bother to go and look online, you can see there's plenty of the evidence is readily available. There's loads of people uploading videos of, you know, their attendance at a rally, wherever it particularly was. You know, I've seen several from the London protests so far. I watched the RT coverage a bit as well.
I think the Berlin one, I think that had take some topping. There's actually one of the pictures there. I think it's the second from your right hand on that little line at the bottom, I think. No, that's the shit. It's
as far as it goes.
This had a few thousand there. That's it.
Yeah, that's the one from Berlin, isn't it?
Yeah, they reckon 4 million.
I mean, no.
Every street were absolutely packed, and I mean packed. I was trying to watch about 10 different live streams at one stream.
I think that's the same avenue I saw when I mentioned it the other week when they did the previous week's gathering, yeah? And last week, you know, I said the articles in the mainstream were saying like there was a few hundred people in Berlin, and I'd seen the images of that avenue. And it's like, no way is that just a few hundred people. That's like tens of thousands. You know, you'd see it just running down the road.
How long would you say that is? About a mile and a half, that road?
In scale in that image, no, it's probably only about half a mile at best in that image. But
no, I mean
the crowd goes beyond the end of the image.
Yeah, yeah. I don't mean in that. I mean the actual road itself.
Oh,
not in the image. I think it's about a mile and a half, isn't it?
I don't know.
It was from one end right to the other, all the side streets, and more than the side streets, immediate side streets, they were heaving.
Yeah.
But Poland again, that one was the same. I think the other one I watched, London were a decent turnout, but nowhere near as much as the rest of the countries that did it.
I agree with you, but I still think it was a good percentage.
Yeah.
Basing it on that kind of, you know, I'm not good at maths, so I'm not trying to claim I'm, you know, sitting there calculating all the numbers and that kind of shit. I'm not. This is a, you know, very vague.
1/20th, something like that, of the population.
Yeah, as a representative number.
Yeah.
Sounds about right. But that's what I was looking at it as. Even if, because as I do, you know, I try to look at this stuff with a critical mind, and I'm thinking, yeah, there will be some controlled opposition manipulators in that crowd. There'll be some purposefully organized groups that are there that are meant to misdirect people and appropriate the narrative and appropriate the public's energy so that they can steam valve it or co-opt it into some other direction, like they've done with so many other protest movements, you know, all time. But
mainly stood out for that.
But even if you leave that aside, the numbers of people turned up, to me, indicates that there's a growing number of the general populace, because each of those people represent far more than just one person turning up. Yeah, because each of those people would have been networked with other people. We've all got our own sort of social networks around us, and 100% of the people don't necessarily need to turn up. You know, it's a little bit like representative politics. You know, one person turning up there could represent 10, 20 people in their social network that may not agree with them 100%, but are at least, you know, looking at the information or asking questions, etc. Or they think something's wrong, even if they don't, you know, they can't put their finger on what it is.
I think the main instigators I see more are tried with the police. When they were all stood round about Downing Street.
Well, I didn't keep the article open, but I did look at one earlier about Piers Corbyn being arrested again.
Yeah.
And I mean, fair play to the guy. I would just say that, fair play to him, because he's been going to all these different protests. He's been going up and down the country all through the past recent months while all this crazy crap has been going on. he's been travelling up and down the country, talking to people and attending protests, etc. And the police now are just harassing him. That really is kind of like the definition of police harassment. The event, from what I saw of the articles, and I only saw images, not video clips, there was only photographs, but it was after the event was basically over. He was just walking around chatting with people in the crowd and things like that, and the police just come up and lay hands on him and arrest him. And he's now, according to the media today, he's now going to be charged the 10,000 fine that the government recently brought in, the £10,000 fine. That is the definition of harassment. He wasn't doing anything wrong. The authorities were well aware that this protest was taking place. The people organising it had been in touch with the authorities and it had all been arranged, etc., etc. But they come up to him after the event is over and just lay hands on him and arrest him. That's punitive action. Yeah, that's harassment. But, fair play to him. He was there at least.
They did have a go at instigating police outside Downing Street. The steel barriers that they have.
Yeah.
Instead of it being in the single line as it usually is, what they've done is box formed it. So they've done it like one that way, one that way, and one like that. So it was box section all the way across. So it's like a 1.2 meters boxes, yeah. You weren't getting through them. Crowd couldn't reach over in it, police or anything like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, they marched them all in front of the barrier, in between the barrier and the crowd. Tried to get him.
There's quite a few police there, because I was watching a lot of that coverage on the RT coverage, because they had I think it was Rupley, their live service. They were there live filming it. But I noticed there was a lot of police that weren't wearing face masks.
Yeah.
And what made me laugh at one point, it wasn't exactly apparent at first, but the police were having difficulty coming in and out of that cordon.
Yeah.
And it wasn't clear why. And then I don't know if the RT camera guy was trying to find out what was going on. He changed position. And then where he was, you could see the little gate they had in the fence. And some member of the public had put a bike lock cable around the gate so they couldn't get in and out without having to. Yeah. And they got the big bolt cutters out and they couldn't cut it. So they were getting really pissed off. It was funny.
Yeah, I seen them caught like a cat flap.
Yeah. They had to keep sort of ducking in and out to get in and out of their paddock. But like you say, they had deliberately created. I've not seen that style of barrier done before. But it was like little squares made out of the metal barrier, so that it created like I suppose they'll say that's their social distance requirement, isn't it? Yeah. It was like a metre plus, as Boris says. 1 metre plus, that's from here to infinity. Yeah.
Well, it was 3.2, hadn't they done? 1.2 metres, I think they are then. 6 foot, if I remember rightly.
I wanted to mention this as well because I just thought this was funny. This made me laugh when I saw that when you posted it. Because this, how can I describe this? This is not exactly co-opting, because having sort of been somewhat in, studied at a university level. I never bothered completing anything, but I have studied at a university level, so I know that in their own sort of academic documentation and practices, this is the kind of thing they would do anyway. And if I think about therapy and counselling and stuff like that, this is the same kind of stuff that they're taught in those kind of professions. This is like psychological counselling methodology kind of thing. But it's just the fact that this is being presented by the European Commission, to try and use empathy in questions, stop the spread. And it's talking about like how to talk to somebody who believes in conspiracy theories. And I was reading this and I was saying, it really is now the tinfoil hat is on the other head. Because you people that are still believing the bullshit, and I'm saying you people, not to the audience listening now, I'm talking to like the people who are part of this, the people who wrote this pamphlet, yeah? These people are now the people that are believing in conspiracy theorists or theories. You know, they're the ones that believe that a conspiracy theory, that there is this deadly pathogen that is so deadly that you don't know you've got it until you get tested to see that you have it with a test that has an 80% false positive rate, such that you're more than likely to not have it. And even if you do have it, what you most likely have that the test registered is just the debris or the antibodies for the coronavirus itself, which is any cold or influenza flu that you've ever had in your life. If you believe that, then you're a fucking conspiracy theorist of the crazy tinfoil hat kind wearing kind. But this is them basically saying exactly the same kind of stuff. I know I've said pretty much everything on this list at some point over the years doing these shows. Because so many times, one of the most common questions we get presented with, or maybe not necessarily a question, but just a statement, people say things like, how do I wake up my mum? How do I wake up my brother? How do I wake up my friends? Yeah, how do I talk to people about this information? And it's exactly the same thing. When you're talking to people who adhere to the official narrative, it's the same as saying you're talking to somebody who has been indoctrinated by a cult. And not only being, I shouldn't just say past tense, is being, are being, present tense. They are being constantly indoctrinated and having that indoctrination reinforced into a cult mentality thinking based on the propaganda that is presented to them to affect their perception of reality and each other. That is like you talk. Go on.
I was going to say, it's the biggest contradicted read I've ever read.
Well, I'll just quickly read some of them out if I can see it. When talking to somebody who firmly believes in a conspiracy theory, be aware that any argument challenging the conspiracy theory may be taken as proof that you are part of the conspiracy and reinforce the belief. So, if I say to somebody who firmly believes that the government official narrative is totally correct and that I'm just a crazy conspiracy theorist, and I talk to them, then I know that whenever I present an argument to them that challenges their conspiracy theory, they're going to take that as proof that I am a member of a conspiracy trying to attack them.
Yeah.
This is classic, they accuse you of doing what they themselves are doing.
Reverse psychology.
Yeah, and it's a classic cult manipulation technique. I was going to say occult manipulation as well, because a lot of the secret societies and groups like that use this kind of methodology to manipulate people.
Yeah.
They probably believe in more than one conspiracy theory. Well, that's certainly just a simple truth, and it's true of everybody, because I think maybe that might sound like too much of a generalization, but I think you'll find it's accurate if you actually use the definitions of those words properly.
Yeah.
So if you look at what conspiracy actually means in its definition, you look at what theory actually means in its definition, and every time Doris leans over the fence to gossip with her mate Margaret, in the other garden, and they're talking about whether or not Mr. Bill up the road has got himself a new sports car because he's desperate to find a young wife, that's a conspiracy theory. It's as simple as that. That's all those words mean. That's all that phrase means. Speculation. And speculation constructed into a theory of potential cause and effect. So they may believe in more than one conspiracy theory. Yes, of course they do. That's just a statement of reality in both directions. You could say that to a believer of the official narrative. So you believe in more than one conspiracy theory, don't you? Yeah. To accept the bullshit that's happening at the moment, they must believe in more than one conspiracy theory. They will probably argue hard to defend their beliefs. What is that even saying, other than be prepared for a fight? So that's kind of like neuro-linguistic programming to cause the reader to feel that they are embattled with their opponent. You know, these people are going to defend their beliefs. Well, yeah, that's what people do with beliefs. That's what they call beliefs, because it's something that somebody adopts, and then that's their chosen bias, and they'll defend it against destruction because they like it, because they believe in it.
Yeah, always makes them turn childish and into not like playground name calling and throwing emojis at you.
Yeah. That's the anger reaction, the defensive anger reaction, because they don't know how to deal with it in a rational or logical way, so they resort to emotional reaction, which is, you're trying to kill my thing, so I'm going to defend it.
I just reply with capital letters, yes. I was waiting for the childish part.
I'll just read some of these notes as well. So what can you do, it says, because as I said, this is the kind of stuff that I've been talking about for a long time in reference to how to talk to people who are immersed in the matrix mainstream media narrative bullshit. Encourage open debate and questions. Well, fuck me, talk about hypocrisy. You know, I can't be asked with swapping and changing the screen share again, but just refer to that image of all those people outside that cafe gathered around that woman, intimidating her to agree with their ideology. Encourage open debate and questions.
Or chasing father and daughter down the street.
Yeah. Or the authoritarian jackbooted police jumping on people because they're not wearing a mask. You know, forcibly arresting them and carting them off because they're not wearing a mask or following social distancing rules or blah, 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 blah. Encourage open debate and questions? No. Where's the open debate between somebody like Vernon Coleman and the various political experts that the government keep referring to, like the SAGE group and whatever? Why will they flat out refuse and not participate in an open debate and questions with somebody like him, with Vernon Coleman? Well, I wonder why. You know, so that is just ridiculous. But ask detailed questions about their theory in order to trigger self-reflection. That's called Socratic method. And they don't give people the proper philosophical grounding and foundation to get that point of what they're talking about with that. But that is Socratic method. And that is, I've found over the years, that is the best way to approach entrenched beliefs. Don't just tell people they're wrong. Just ask them about their beliefs, but ask detailed questions that, you know, point out some of the difficulties with what they claim they believe in, some of the inconsistencies, hypocrisies, biases, etc., etc., etc. The illogical constructions that people defend because they like them so much. Things like that. All of these points are just simple things that we should be doing with each other all the time. Show empathy. Often the person may be truly fearful and distressed. I wonder why they're truly fearful and distressed. Could it be because the government that you supposedly are working with are literally saturating them in fear porn propaganda and making them distressed and anxious every day, constantly? But you know, show empathy.
The true terrorists of the country, mainstream media.
Yeah.
It's the true definition. If you look up the definition in I nearly said Bible then, in dictionary. Might be in Bible, I don't know, it might be. But yeah, if you look it up, explains more or less down to a T MSN.
Mentioned in the Bible.
See, I must have known, Cookie.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm optimistic and I'm hopeful that we're not going to end up in that kind of situation because we don't believe in wearing masks. But it makes the point, as all good memes do. It sort of uses an extreme and a bit of comedy and to make a point of a principle or a logical argument or whatever. But yeah, this is the kind of stage in the crazy. Yeah, hello to the future again. I hope you're still listening. If this content is survived and you're able to read it and see it and whatever, I'm sure in the future they'll think it's crazy that people talked on just a flat screen, without the sense of touch and things like that. Yeah, they'll all have the chip stuck in the side of their head from Elon's pig machine.
Yeah,
they can all get they can dial up the sensation of crucifixion so they know what it's like to not wear a mask in 2020. Oh, thanks, T. Yeah, it was Big T that made up this meme, so thanks to Big T. There you go, folks.
You must have been reading my mind then, Cookie. I was just going to say, Tony's just said it. I made that.
There you go. You see, that's Paula says, wanted to share this. I spent an hour today watching bees collecting pollen. Awesome how life is with the tiny free gifts that surround us. Peace and love to you all. Thanks, Paula.
Hi, Paula. You all right?
Yeah. You see, nature is carrying on with its thing. Nature's doing its thing. I did start originally when I first said, yeah, that's a good point to talk about protests. You mentioned about the frequency stuff at the moment, the magnetosphere.
Yeah.
And I had intended to sort of bring that into the discussion when I mentioned the protests, because the mainstream media have picked on a couple of the protests and sort of talked about them a little bit, but they haven't mentioned 5G, as far as I know. There might be some of the media that have sort of brought the point up. But they haven't mentioned 5G, and they haven't mentioned anything to do with the solar changes and the changes in our frequency environment. I call it that. Yeah? The environment of the magnetosphere and the electromagnetic frequencies that surround us, and we emanate to ourselves as well. A lot of what's been going on in recent years and will carry on into the next few years because of the cycle of the solar changes of the sun's cycle. That effect is going to become more and more apparent for more people. This is a personal point of view, because as I said to the guys before we started, I don't have like a stack of scientific papers and evidence to sort of make my argument on. I know a lot of it exists out there, but I'm not like presenting this as a scientific theory or argument. But I really do think that a lot of those, I call them galactic changes, because it's not just the sun's solar cycle, it's the galactic environment that we're moving through, and the changes in the whole galactic environment. That has an effect on us, has an effect on the weather, has an effect on the planet itself. Why are we seeing so much more crazy weather and extremes of weather? Why are we seeing all these electrical discharges increasing? Because the planet's own static electrical generation field, its EMF field, is being affected by all these changes. That is going to affect us biologically and psychologically, spiritually. It is going to affect our energy. I do think that is what most people are referring to when they talk about the awakening. I certainly think they are interlinked. The changes in our environment feed into the changes in our thinking, that as more and more people see this bullshit for what it is, it's encouraging them. It's providing the fertile ground for them to change their own thinking. We were all indoctrinated by a system. At some point, some people wake up to that system. But over the centuries, it's only ever been a handful of people, in terms of statistically compared to the population. It's only a small group of people that ever see this kind of stuff and talk about it. So we end up with some of those major figures from history like Mencken and Voltaire, people who sort of point at this stuff and go, all this stuff is bullshit and manipulation and propaganda and tyranny. What are you believing in? It's craziness. But now we're getting to a point where a lot more information is available. A lot more people can interact with multitudes of others almost instantaneously. Like now I'm talking to however many people are tuned in. I don't know what the number is at the moment. Now, is it 40 or 39? Something like, live viewers, 39. Hello to everyone. Yeah, I can broadcast to that many people at once. 200 years ago, I'd be lucky in my kind of life situation. I would have been lucky if I could have talked to 20 people at once. Whereas now I can reach multiple people, and that escalates over time as the video sits on my channel, and people who didn't watch it live can come and tune in after the fact. The numbers build up. And I'm just one small node in a multitude of other nodes in that network of connections. That difference now is creating or adding into that great awakening. Energetically, people are feeling more aware or more sensitive to their environment because of the changes in the magnetosphere and our own EM output. I think we are basically stretching. We're finding an environment that we've not experienced for millennia, and that sensitivity is building up and building up. And people feel that as an upswell of energy. They look for a direction for that energy. We've all been indoctrinated to accept a system of this pseudo parenthood of the state structure system, this hierarchical system. We look to that for what we do with this energy, and that just turns around and says jackboot, 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 because that's all they understand. That is how the whole system is built. Rigid control and domination. So if the thing doesn't fit into the shape of that rigid control and domination, then the immovable object gets broken, basically. The structure that they have built is based in the rigidity of this density of materialism. That might seem a bit esoteric or philosophical for people, but they're dealing with the lowest, densest levels of energy. The structures they have built are solid like concrete in the density of that energy. The foundation requires that density structure. So this energy comes in like water, like Bruce said so long ago. Water can wear things down. It can break down the biggest mountain eventually. Just give it a bit of time or volume, and it will bring down the biggest mountain. And that is a lot of what's happening. There's all this energy building up in this solar change. People are feeling that, and they're feeling the expansion of themselves, and they're looking for where that energy goes. And this system just presents crosses. That could make a point about the kind of Saturnian occult control system, and the X in the box, the cube that's on your head, etc. But
our orb clouds just met the orb cloud of another galaxy as well. Mm-hmm. So there's another galaxy actually colliding with ours at the moment, which isn't very much spoke about.
That changes the kind of galactic radiation that is reaching us, and other materials potentially. It's not necessarily just radiation per se. But it is all. Let me see if I can find another comedic one.
If sun comes alive on cycle 26, a decent CME off that, well, I think it'll knock us back to Stone Age anyway.
Possibly. Again, it depends on what kind of technology you're talking about. Yes, it will affect electronics, but it won't affect hydraulics.
No.
It won't affect biology, possibly.
No.
I leave that a little bit open because we can't say for 100% just how influenced we are by that galactic solar input in terms of our biology. We are solar-driven beings.
I mean, like with the technology like this way. I mean, obviously we still have the diesels, combustible engines, and things like that, but not combustible, compression engine. Sorry, the petrol's combustion, isn't it? Diesel's compression. But yeah, I think right. Go on.
Well, I was just going to say, I thought I'd show this one because it just seems appropriate. The one thing I'd say though is she got it slightly wrong. Her right arm should be pointing down.
Yeah.
If she's going to do the Baphomet, then left arm up, right arm down. But yeah, whatever. She's doing her usual flesh puppet job. She's being a good little flesh puppet, showing everybody, look, wear the mask. You can even fashionista it up a bit. You can bedazzle it, stick some gems on it, and
Do you think she were brought up in it, Cookie? Do you think she were brought up in that circle? Because
yeah.
day one, she weren't right, was she?
Yeah. But these are, I feel this is when you get into stuff like the cult of Dionysus, basically. And this is classically, this is a age-old situation where the entertainers or the top cadre of the entertainers absolutely are controlled by the state system itself. Not necessarily the face front of your government that you see, like the politicians that appear on the telly or whatever. I'm talking about the real apparatus of the state. They control all these people in one way or another. Yeah. It may not be the equivalent of having a direct handler that tells them exactly how to act and what to say, but they are handled, they are managed, they are promoted deliberately, and they are fed a deliberate script to present to the public. Absolutely. And that is the cult of Dionysus, yeah? They knew, Plato pointed this out long ago, that you need to control the entertainment media because the entertainment media can fashion the perceptions of the populace. So if you have an entertainment media that gives the populace the truth, there'll be no more need for government. So that would be the end of your state system. So instead you do the opposite, like Goebbels talk about, yeah? You feed the population a lie and you use the entertainers to reinforce that lie, to persuade the public that it's real, that it's the new normal. The new abnormal is the new normal. Fucking... So, yeah.
I'm surprised what's it's not outside of her. I forgot her name now. Virus. Miley Virus.
Oh, Miley Virus, yeah. Yeah, she hasn't been on the scene for a while, probably because of all the shit going on. But I'll leave it on the image of those different protests. Thanks for tuning in, folks. I'll wrap it up there. It's just coming up to the hour. Sorry, coughing at you a lot again. Thanks to everyone in the chat room. Thanks for joining in. Shield Destroyer, hello. Hope you're all right, mate. And Paula, hello. Just having a quick scroll up. Groove Dodger, hello. I'm not sure if I have or have not said hello to some of you. I might have already said hello to some of you, and I'm just repeating myself. So, Earache, hello. I hope they aren't waiting for 50%. Hang on, let me put that up. I hope they aren't waiting for 50% to be awake, then light the touch paper with the 50% sleepwalkers. Yeah. Well, I think a lot of it comes back to that 80-20 rule. Even though it's not strictly scientifically absolutely 80%, 20%, there is a general rule, or maxim, I suppose you could call it. There's a general maxim that most things divide into an 80-20 division. So maybe it's that kind of area where we need to get up to about 20% of people, even if they're only slightly aware of what's going on. But if we can reach about 20% of the population, which I think we are now, getting out to that kind of number. And I'm saying we, just as a general catch-all, not me personally. You know, there's loads of people doing a hell of a lot more than me. But the output that we're involved in is starting to reach about 20% of the population. And it's that active. Yeah, is it 100th monkey effect? Yeah, it's that active percentage. And by active, I don't mean that they have to go out to a protest and shit like that, but their mind, their energy, their spirit is actively engaged in the debate. Call it that. Yeah, it's like a spiritual debate that's going on. You know, some people call it a spiritual war, but you know, your spirit can't die, so warfare becomes a bit of a misnomer. You know, it's not exactly accurate, is it? If your spirit can never die, then what exactly does war mean? Yeah, war is about the mortal realm, this density, not the spiritual realm.
Notice the UK showed that USA has protested is done correctly.
Yeah.
There's no violence.
Yeah. And no intimidation of others in that kind of fascistic manner of, you know, in your face, you must agree with us. That's not how this change is going to happen. Yeah.
And that was the whole of Europe that did that. There was no violence out of about what? I think there were about 10 countries, maybe 11 countries that participated in this.
Yeah. So, hello again to the future, one last time. Don't think it was all as crazy as you might have read in the history books. Don't believe all those history books. If you've discovered this content, and maybe that means we did better than we'd been hoping for. Because if this content survives, then we must have done better than we were hoping for. Yeah, so it's all optimistic at the moment. And in that, I'll show that. Hang on, stop screen sharing that one. Just for one final time, I'll flick that one up for a screen share. Yeah, 2020, tyrannical, but mostly smiley. So, yeah. Tyrannical, but mostly smiley. I hope you're enjoying it in the future. Thanks again, folks. We'll see you again soon. I think there is a reality chat on Wednesday. I'm not 100% certain. The other guys are off in a field somewhere in Wales enjoying themselves, the lucky buggers. I think they'll be back in time, so we should be doing Wednesday night, but like I say, I'm not 100% sure. Just keep an eye on your notifications. Hopefully it'll pop up. That's the reality chat on Wednesday night, 8 p.m. And as I said near the start, please check out Steve to Goose. He does a mystery show on Thursday night. And keep watching, keep looking, keep thinking, keep talking, keep on keeping on. It's a massive cliche, but I do love that phrase because it is that stoic endurance. You know, you shouldn't put up with bullshit. I'm not suggesting that you endure the bullshit, but to learn some strength, endurance with that strength. That's the power of the water to keep flowing, to keep your energy moving. Anyway, yeah, I'll start waxing lyrical again. Thanks again, and thanks for joining in, Dean. Thanks to Gary. We'll see you again soon. Take care, folks. Got you.
Good night, folks.